Welcome to the Divine Insight Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Travis. I am your host. I'm here today to talk about the soul and the soul's journey. I think if I were to think back 15 years ago, before I even started doing energy medicine, I was an attorney working at the Office of Civil Rights. I would have told you you were crazy if I would have heard you tell me that I was going to be on the air 15 years later than then talking about the soul and the soul's journey. And I think it's just funny to see how my life has progressed over the years. And I think that that is definitely a demonstration of my soul's journey. And something that I have learned in my own life is the more I learn and the more I connect consciously with my intentional desire to learn and also know and also co-create with the universe, I become much more fluent, if you will, in how the universe wants to communicate with me in whatever language works for me. Today, I'm going to talk about how to do that. I'm going to give a little bit of a background in what I have learned over time, not something that I would have believed many years ago. I would have told you, like I said, you were crazy. I would have said, absolutely, there's no such thing as clairvoyance. I, in fact, was an atheist. I didn't necessarily believe in the afterlife or know what happens when we die. But over the years, since I've been working with clients, I have learned much about the soul and the soul's journey. So I'm going to share that with you today. I'm really excited to do that. So thank you wherever you're listening and whenever you're doing so. There's no accident that you're here. I believe that we are all learning to have more of a consciously mystical experience with the universe because we have unlearned it as we grow up. We're taught language. We're not truly taught how energy works. We're not taught about our consciousness. We're not taught about the laws of the universe or how our reality actually works. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and to provide you with information on the way that you can connect with your own soul, with your own divine plan, and encourage you to reach out to me should you have any questions. You can shoot me an email, travis@divineinsight.com. I'd like to also make a quick announcement. I'm really excited. I will be joining a local in LA location to do my first workshop in LA. So I'm going to be going to Awakenings here. Whoops, I'm on the wrong side, which is in Newport Boulevard in Costa Mesa. I'm really excited to be there. I am confirming with them today. So it's not on my website and it's not on their website, but I will be doing a workshop in September that will be very exciting to talk about. I'm talking about intuition and essentially tools of divination, ways that you can learn to connect consciously with the universe around you. So I'm really excited about that. Visit my website, divineinsight.com, for more information, and I will be updating the events page shortly. So I'm excited to do that and excited for my first workshop in LA. Can't wait. So for those of you listening in anywhere else in the world, thank you so much for joining. And I'll continue to have client sessions. I've updated my scheduling app, which can be found on the sessions page of my website at divineinsight.com. And you can book your session right there if you're interested in a distance session. Clients have told me that they, in fact, thought I was in the same room with them during the session. And so I know personally that clients have had tremendous healings from distant sessions. It's almost the same as having me right there with you in a live session in the room. We do a video call. I record it just like I do if we're in the same room, and it's quite helpful. So for more information about that, just visit the sessions page on my website. So as I said, this is a relatively new topic for me in that I didn't necessarily believe in the afterlife most of my adult life. It wasn't until I started to do Reiki on clients and I started to see clairvoyant images of past life traumas that are still affecting the person now that I came to realize more acutely that we are in fact eternal beings and that we in fact do choose our lives for very specific reasons that we knew before we incarnated, that we choose to forget so that we can learn experientially a lot of the reason why we do that is because some of us are quite stubborn, and we learn best through empirical ways. So, bumbling around in the earth realm, and where we have pain and we have love and we have emotional resonance, those are very strong ways to learn lessons. And it's one thing, it's much like I would use the example of learning something in theory versus practice. Earth is a practice school. It's a third dimensional space. It has time, it has space, it has matter, and physical energy and metaphysical energy. So the unique combination of those things in the earth realm is part of why we chose to live these lives. Now, I'm not going to go back to ultimate source. I could, in fact, I'll maybe channel a little bit about that as well. It wasn't the purpose of this talk to go back to sort of question why it is that we have a physical or non-physical spirit at all in the first place. But for the purpose of this show, I'm going to talk about your divine plan, where it comes from, why you have one, and how to access it consciously in your life, so that you can learn more about what it is that you're here to do. And I think why you might even be curious about the subject in the first place. I mean, one, if you're listening to this show at all, then obviously this is something that your soul is calling for you to know in your life more consciously. I think what has happened is that over time in our evolution, particularly more recently, where we have technology, where our consciousness is now, rather than being physically present in our physical bodies, we have projected our consciousness into devices, mechanical devices, electronic devices, our phones, televisions, our computers. We spend a predominantly majority part of our day in front of a device, much like I'm right here, right? You're watching, you're listening. You might be driving, you might be doing laundry, you might be going on a walk, and in that way you're able to connect a little bit differently. But for those of you watching, you're 100% with me right now, or you're not. There, you could be having something in the background. But I think for the purpose of this show, I want to talk about how we can connect consciously and directly. And the reason that it is so important that we do that is that we create more confusion in our lives when we are in constant reaction to what's going on around us versus our own internal desire or soul's desire that wants some expression in the moment. And we have responsibilities. We have jobs where we're often serving people, and maybe that calling is something that doesn't fulfill us. And I think when I have seen clients that aren't connected to their soul plan, oftentimes they'll share things about feeling tired all the time. They don't have much creativity in their lives. They feel depressed. They're not motivated even to get up in the morning. Maybe often they don't like their jobs. They might be in a relationship, a primary relationship with a spouse or a lover or a boyfriend or girlfriend, and it's not calling to them, but they know that they love the person. It's not something that they had imagined that they wanted to be in, and they might feel stuck. And those sorts of things might come up. I also see many clients who aren't as connected to their divine plan or their soul's plan for them. They might often be experiencing things like distrusting themselves, making decisions that aren't empowered or don't feel good. And addiction cycles might show up more frequently when this is happening. With food, addictive patterned thinking, could also be with substances, of course, drugs or alcohol. And I think all of those things, all of the ways in which we escape our reality of who we are false. And so I would say, first off, sit down and ask yourself, am I happy? Am I happy in my relationships? Am I happy in my work? Do I feel fulfilled? Do I feel passion? We came into the earth realm not to be sad, suicidal, depressed, despondent, um, sick. We came to live. We came to thrive. And it's all the ways in which we have unlearned how we truly are and who we truly are, which are continuing to cause us more, become more of a distance to ourselves, from ourselves, excuse me. So when we go back, and this has been true for every client that I have worked on, where I have seen a past life show up, or I have seen their Akashic records, which Akashic records is essentially, it's an etheric template, which is much like a book that contains every experience that you've ever had, along with essentially the vibrational frequency of that emotional reaction or emotion of the event. And so it's also contained within our energy field. It's our second layer of the energy field, is the mental plane. And in that way, there are often ways, and science actually can support this. There's been a lot of new science. I had a guest on the show, Cedric Bertelli, several weeks ago, who kind of talked a little bit about this. But we are consciously aware of only a certain percentage of what is going on around us at any given time, but we are unconsciously aware, and our bodies are sort of like antennae that are taking in all other characteristics around the events that are occurring around us. And so when these events happen, we are then in an environment where if a traumatic event happens, which we want to avoid, our subconscious or subliminal messaging is, we don't want that to happen again. But unless we actually determine that we didn't cause it, then we may often recreate it just because that's where we are vibrating our frequency at. So let me elaborate a little bit more on this. Every thought that you have in this physical body has an emotional resonance into your physical body. And when we are in our highly emotional, we have stronger beliefs that are sort of created in those environments. So when we're, like, say, a child from 0 to 7, we have a strong emotional body. We're not particularly rational. And when traumatic events happen, our brain creates the reasons why it's happening in order for us to try to avoid it in the future. But we're not always right. And so as we grow older, if we have belief systems that are based on these events that don't work for us, then in our own lifetime, we might, have to revisit that belief, because we get through therapy or through awareness or our own self-healing, we recognize that we have a belief system that doesn't work for us. But if that belief system has happened and it's been a traumatic event that occurred in a past life, then oftentimes what can happen is we have the emotional and spiritual resonance in this life, but not the event. So we don't have the capacity or the ability to actually understand what it was that happened that is continuing to cause us to be in this particular situation that we do not want. And in that way, what I learned is that we have, much like a tapestry, a collection of all of our lifetimes that together show us what it is that we're here to learn. And each life, we have chosen one or more specific lessons. A lot of us are learning how to love ourselves unconditionally. A lot of us in this life, in the earth realm, what I'm seeing globally is we are learning to love others unconditionally, which we can see now globally in the US. There's still a lot of hate for others who are different. There's a lot of misogyny. There's a lot of homophobia out there and xenophobia. And we're still learning how to love each other fully and completely without judgment. And this is something that all of us have in fact chosen as one of our life lessons. Though there might be something else that you, and often are, excuse me, something else that all of us have chosen to learn more specifically to ourselves. I'll give you an example. Maybe you want to learn how to be more nurturing, or so you decide to live a life where you have 7 children, whereas someone else might look at that life and say, what are you thinking? Why would you have that many children? And we wouldn't understand why that person would choose to have a lot of children if we just look at them and say, wow, they're responsible, or whatever ways in which we judge them. But to that person, that mother or father who wants to be nurturing and has, a lot of children as well, they wanted to learn how to nurture children, and so had a lot of them. And so we are learning how to feel compassion, and so we have a life that's traumatic or difficult. And there are all these life lessons that we choose to learn, and how it works is essentially, as spiritual beings, we're always looking to grow. We're always looking to expand our consciousness. We're looking to truly understand each other and ourselves. All those nooks and crannies of different things that we don't like about ourselves are exactly the things that we are being shown, that are ways in which we can learn to love ourselves more. And so before we incarnate, we essentially, we're spiritual beings. And if you think about this energetically, physics would tell us that energy cannot die, it can only change form. If that's true, then, and if we look at scientifically how our consciousness exists, we have a consciousness, it's measurable, then when our bodies expire, our consciousness remains. And so our consciousness, which is our higher self, if you will, then has the capacity to be outside, and is outside our 3rd dimensional realm, and can be free in the other dimensions that exist to choose to come back or not. There are so many dimensions that surround us, that are overlapping us, and we are only consciously aware of the 3rd dimensional one. We can consciously become aware of other dimensions by slowing our brains down and accessing our own unique multisensory abilities. I talk about that in other workshops, but those things might include things like being clairvoyant or clairsentient, where you can feel things that don't necessarily exist in the 3rd dimensional space in front of you, but do exist, such as seeing a picture of a client's energy field I might get, or I do get, which is called clairvoyance. I get a clear image and I can see things that my eyes cannot. We might get direct intuition in the form of claircognizance, a knowing of something. We know what we know because we know it, and we don't necessarily know why. It's just a firm conviction that we absolutely understand, and we can't necessarily explain it with our brain. So we choose to live this life. I think a lot of times I get questions, well, why don't I remember all of them? Well, one, I think, why don't I remember my past lives? Wouldn't that be helpful if I did? And so I think the answer to that is, it would be way too overwhelming for us to, have conscious awareness of all of our past lives and this one simultaneously. I think, in part, it also defeats the purpose of us learning to have the experiences that we need to in order to grow, because otherwise we wouldn't necessarily learn them. Again, we'd learn them pretty much only in theory. And so when we sit down, and think of it like this, think of, if you're going to see a movie and you really don't know what movie you want to watch, so you talk to other people, you read reviews, you decide how you want to feel, what you want to experience, and what sounds entertaining or something like that. And maybe there's people in it that you just absolutely love and you want to watch them and see what happens and experience life with them. In the etheric realm, in the work that I do, we call that like a soul pod. There are people that you absolutely love to be in the movie with. So the idea is that when you sit down, you go to the theater, and the movie starts playing, you don't remember the reviews. You don't think about what you read about the movie. You don't remember why you decided to go to the movie in the first place. You're 100% experiencing it in that movie theater. All the emotions, all the characters, you're invested. You're 100% in the movie. And at the end of the movie, then you sit back and you evaluate your experience and you tell yourself, wow, I really enjoyed that. Or maybe, gosh, that really sucked. And here's all the reasons why I didn't like it. And if I go to another movie, I want it to be better. And this is how I want it to be better. And this is what I want to learn in that movie. That's essentially how, that's a metaphor, if you will, or an example of how it actually works when it comes to our third dimensional experience in the human body. We decide who our parents are. We know at some level what experiences we want to have in order to grow and evolve. And you might wonder, why is it that I chose such a difficult experience? Or why did I choose to lose a brother at an early age, or to have a disease, or to experience the death of a parent, or even something more traumatic, your own death, an infant or something like that. And I think it's difficult to say there's any one answer for every person that is the same, because if you go back to the example that I was talking about before, this tapestry of, you have a unique tapestry that includes all of the lifetimes that you have been in. And maybe you've been in 250 lifetimes, and you've been a healer or wanting to be on the path of healing or helping others for the last 10 or something like that. You have a unique energetic footprint, as I like to call it, specific to you. And other people, you can't compare them to each other, because we are all unique. Even though we're the same energy body, we're made of the same stuff, the same consciousness. We have different mechanisms of personality oftentimes as the result of the way in which our consciousness has expressed itself over time. And so I can't say that any one of us has a specific, I've given a couple of higher level examples of main things that we're trying to learn, but really only you can know what you're here to learn. And when I'm in session with a client, I will see, I often describe it as I'm merely a mirror and a flashlight. I will essentially tell you something that deep down you really already know, and I'm helping align you to the path you've already chosen. And I think this comes to another point and question that I get, which is, well, that takes free will out of it. I mean, what about, do I then believe that every single event that occurs in my life is predetermined because I've already decided what I want to do? And I think to a large extent, I would say, no, that's not true. And what I mean by that is, I think we know what kind of tree we wanted to be when we decided to incarnate. We decided what general life lessons we wanted to learn. But I believe that, much like a tree, I think each free will decision point that we have is like a branch. So you always have free will and always will. That is one of the fundamental laws of the universe, is to honor free will at all times. But I do think that there are certain objectives that we have wanted to attain and meet that we have predetermined. And it's different for everyone. But, for example, during a session where I was working with a bunch of people that I was in a mentoring group with over time, several years ago, almost 8, and I had a recollection when I was born of their spirits around me, welcoming me, and sort of kind of like good buddies, they'd say, hey, see you later. And so it wasn't until we all came together at a later age under the tutelage of a woman by the name of Marie Manucherry that we realized that this was something we had all decided to do together much earlier, meaning our souls had brought us together. And that's what our soul does is, you'll come across people who you've known before that you can't explain why you have a comfort with them. You might be in the grocery store and feel discomfort or completely uncomfortable by somebody who's standing next to you and not be able to explain why. And it's possible that there is some recollection in your energy field, in your energy body of a event, that occurred with that person that was uncomfortable. There are a lot of new souls out there because we're expanding, and over time we have less it's less possible or less probable that we will run into people that we know unless we consciously decided to before we were born, which we all do in many ways. We often incarnate in groups because there are certain people that we just love and adore and love spending time with and love being around, and they know us really, really well, and we get along super well. And oftentimes we might decide to incarnate with them. And in a lot of ways, it's about our karma and working out our soul contracts that we have engaged with. And I'll explain what those are. Our karma is really cause and effect. And in some ways, we have decided to work out our karma with somebody that we had an event with, and we can only do that in the earth realm again. And sometimes it by some action that I might have done towards somebody in the past, we might work out an agreement where I experience what I need to in order to avoid doing that to someone else again. Maybe I needed to learn compassion, and because of it, maybe I was a murderer or a rapist or something in a past life, killed someone, and I needed to work out my karma with them. So we decided to work it out in a different way in this life, such as what I had done my own self with my mother, which I think I've talked about before. However, I think the point is that it is something, should you desire more information, about what your soul plan is, there are certain things that you can do, and I'm going to walk you through a couple of them that you can do right now to help align to your soul plan. And I think, I think the ways in which you'll notice things in your life that'll improve are going to be your sense of knowing that you're in the right place at the right time for the right reason, that kind of synchronicity. Those things are more frequent when you are aligned to your soul plan and destiny than not. So if you're in a constant state of frustration and all day you just feel completely overwhelmed and pulled away from everything that you thought you wanted to do, those are examples of times when you are not aligned to your soul plan, because our guides in the universe want us to have a joyous and free and abundant and loving life at all times, and ultimately that is our soul's calling. So anything less than that, anything that is frustrating, creating anger, frustration, things like that, those are examples of times when things aren't aligning into your soul plan. So what I want you to do right now in order to create this environment in your life is, one, to do so consciously, to say, I want my life to reflect more of what will bring me happiness and joy. And if that's true, then it's your responsibility to create the environment where that can happen. And so, one, it's important to create the space in your life where you're consciously working through what you need to in order to have awareness. And I think we don't do that. I think a lot of times we're just constantly reacting to everything that goes around us. We're working out, we're getting exercise, we're going to the grocery store, we're life adminning all day. And then suddenly we're exhausted because we've been on our phone all day, we've been on the computer all day, we're working for someone else and not enjoying ourselves. And so in order to shift that, the important thing is that you, one, create the time in your calendar to do it consciously. you owe it to yourself. And it's a demonstration of love for yourself that you want to create the space in your life to live your best. So to do that, you do it consciously. You make the time, you put on your calendar. And I would do it 3 times a week for a half hour. And that is not a significant investment in time. But what you'll notice is as you do this more and more and more, it'll become less necessary because the things that are keeping you from aligning to your soul and what your true desires are essentially going to be falling away. And every time you gain awareness of what's holding you back and let go of it, you'll have even more resonance and more strongly embodied empowerment in your life, and more synchronicities, to the point where that's all that you have around you is these amazing synchronicities and joy and freedom and independence and autonomy, which is really what we all deserve. Even in relationship, we can still have our own independent autonomy, and a lot of us don't have belief systems that support that, so we're in relationships that don't fit. And we're not willing, because we're afraid, to let them go to one that will fit. And I think that's an important thing to consider when we only have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the physical realm. How much time you spend with any given person, or even online or communicating, that's an investment in your time. And so who deserves to be in your time is an important thing to evaluate. So in that 20 minutes, here's what I suggest that you do. I suggest you have a pad of paper out and a pen to take any notes that you might have. You can even audio record it, but generally I think that might be confusing to folks. So if you have a pad and paper out, you can write down any notes that you have, any reflections, or any new learnings that might come up. As I said before, we're constantly bombarded with ways that we escape out of our body. So the first thing that we want to do is to connect to our physical body in some meaningful way. So if you're sitting down, putting your feet flat on the ground, not crossing your legs, I think it's important not to be impaired while you're doing this, because we want our consciousness to be reflective of our sober reality and our authentic selves. And when we diminish that by using substances, then that will be less effective. However, if there is medication that you take that's necessary for your wellness, then continue to do that, of course. This is not intended to be sort of medical advice, but what our intention is to ground ourselves into our physical body. And because our brain doesn't necessarily know truth from falsity, if we tell ourselves something that's happening, our body will act as if it is. So listening to my voice, when I tell you that you're going to be grounding into the center of the core of the earth, I want you to believe that. When you're sitting in that chair, I want you maybe close your eyes and imagine that you're sitting on a rock and that your back is against a tree and you're in the woods. And it's a beautiful day and it's comfortable, and there's a light breeze, and you can smell the pine needles, and it's warm, you're comfortable. So go ahead and do that now, and in your mind's eye, maybe you can picture yourself in that woods, and that's the image that you get. So imagine that from the base of your sit bones, where you're sitting, that roots grow, you're connected to that tree, maybe you are the tree. Imagine that this root system goes to the center of the core of the earth, wraps around the core of the earth, and connects you strongly to our earth mother, who, like us, is learning about energy and wants to support us, wants to nourish us. That's her job. She loves to do it. And so when we connect out of our brains into our physical bodies, we do that through grounding. And maybe there's a grounding practice that you can do, or that you do, that helps you do that. Some people ground through swimming. Some people ground through gardening or getting their hands in the dirt. Some people ground through walking or yoga. I use climbing because that's really helpful for me. All the other ways in which I have attempted to, it hasn't really worked effectively, other than this intentional exercise that we're doing right now. So if you're still sitting on this rock next to a tree with your back to the tree, imagine that this root system grows to the center of the earth and fills you with beautiful red light. And this represents your grounding chakra, which is the root chakra. And it exists at the base of your sit bones at your coccyx, and it actually goes down between your legs about 6 inches, and it's a cone, and the point is at the base of your spine. So the more you're able to ground and ground effectively, it nourishes this chakra and also supports your bones and your blood, which is the foundation of your body. And so we want to make sure that we're in a practice of grounding even several times a day. If you find yourself forgetting where you're going, distracted, hitting your head on things, forgetting practical reality given things, then that would be an example of you not being grounded. So imagine this red light filling up your entire body, and this gets you grounded. The next thing you want to do is to surround yourself with love and consciousness and wisdom. And the metaphor that we use for that, or that I like to use for that, is imagine that not, instead of sitting on a rock in a forest, but you are sitting in a cloud in the sky, and you are white light, and you are surrounded by love. You're surrounded by maybe the sun, and you can feel the warmth on your face, on your skin, and maybe there's a light breeze. Again, we want to activate all of our sensory perceptions here, and imagine that this light comes from above, and this light is unconditional love, and that's it. And it's not you. It's just this beautiful light that's coming into your body through the top of your head, which is our crown, and it's meeting the heart is where these two energies meet. So this red energy comes from below, and this white energy of love comes from above, and then they meet in your heart. And now place attention into your heart where you can feel this connection, and take a couple of deep and comfortable breaths at your pace. Breathing really should be natural and comfortable, and notice where you might be feeling discomfort in your body. Just continue to breathe, notice where you feel it, and allow it to express itself. And so this combination of exercises is going to help ground you into the physical realm, and also help you align to your higher self or your higher consciousness. So now, one of the sort of physics laws of the universe is that which is unto itself is drawn. So we understand through physics that energy creates thought, or thought creates energy, and energy follows thought. So my intention is important. And so if we clearly say to ourselves, something that's true for you might be, I ask that the universe help support me consciously in ways that I can easily understand. Please show me how I can more easily connect with my soul's plan right now. Now, as you learn to be aware of these subtle energies that are going around, it might be something that shows up in a color in your brain, in your mind. You might see a color, you might hear a sound, you might feel an energy shift, or you might just have a knowingness. And if you haven't done any sort of conscious connecting to your multisensory abilities, then this is going to feel quite uncomfortable for you, or could feel uncomfortable for you. But what you want to do is to explore the ways in which the universe is trying to communicate with you, and understand that the universe speaks often in metaphors. So be curious about the ways in which the universe is going to communicate with you. Now, also, it might not be in that moment, but as you create this intention, the universe is going to respond. So the more frequently that you set the intention of listening to the universe and asking the universe to show you how you can align to your divine plan or your soul's desire, then the more often, and it'll happen over time as you begin to shift this awareness, that you will begin to notice things that will start to come up, synchronicities. And they're going to be pretty obvious, because, you know, one of the things that I know about, at least me and most of the clients that I work with, that we can be pretty stubborn. So make sure that, you know, that you pay attention and listen. And I think, you know, having more awareness of, hey, what is the universe trying to communicate to me? is a good question to ask yourself on a regular basis, because it's only when we're not listening that we feel frustrated, or that we can feel things that are uncomfortable. Because if we're listening to the universe's message, then we might understand, for example, that maybe this job that I thought I wanted and I was denied, or didn't get, and rather than feel frustrated or sad or angry, maybe I'll know that that wasn't really my job because I didn't get it. So why would I get emotionally invested in an opportunity that actually isn't mine? Otherwise, I would have it. So it's okay to allow myself to know that, well, this was a stepping stone. Something about that process created energy around a new role that's on its way, because I've asked the universe to show me. I've asked the universe to align me to my divine plan consciously, and it takes some time to do that, earth time, earth realm time. Some things just won't come immediately because you're creating a new energy pattern than the one that you've had before, that you've spent your entire life building. Every single moment of everything that you've ever done, said, or thought has brought you to this moment right now. So if you want to change what you're experiencing in your life right now, you have to change how you feel about this current moment, and also how you interact with the energies around you and how you communicate with the universe. And the universe will respond to verbal energy a little bit stronger than thought energy. The universe always responds with yes, no matter what we say or think. And if we are confused, then the universe will give us confusion. So we want to be really clear about what it is that we want, or if not, we can say, please show me what I want. And then be open to noticing when the bus goes by that has a phone number on it that says, call me. We'll do it. If you notice three different people telling you the same thing about, maybe there's an event that you need to go to and it sounds fun, but maybe the first time you just sort of ignore it. And then someone else, a completely other random person that doesn't even know the other person, says, hey, you should really think about this event. I want to go. It sounds really fun. Well, that's a sign, right? So the idea is that you want to be open to whatever signs that the universe is providing for you, and listen and follow. And the more you do that, the better you'll get at it, and the more you'll be able to align your consciousness and your life to the soul's plan that you decided you wanted to live when you came in to the universe. So when you came into the earth realm, excuse me. So that's really it for this topic. Again, if you have questions, feel free to email me, travis@divineinsight.com. I'll answer them on the air or on my website, divineinsight.com. Also on Facebook, you can hit me up at Intuitive Travis, or on Instagram _Travis Taylor. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.